basically I want to explain a little bit about the concept of this show. So what we did is we conducted interviews with individuals that had been diagnosed with ALS, and we'll learn more about that through the process of this performance. Conducted interviews with them, and we had them tell whatever story they felt comfortable telling to us, and then we turned those into monologues. We're going to be doing 3 monologues back to back, and then I'm going to be inviting up a guest expert to speak with me more on like the scientific side of ALS, why it's complicated to find treatments for, some of the more unfortunate realities of ALS, just to kind of supplement the stories that we're telling here so you have a better understanding of it. Reminder of masks, if you're choosing to wear one, please wear it over your nose. We just want to reduce the risk of COVID spread for anyone that has an is immunocompromised, basically. All of the cast and actors have been tested for COVID, so the reason we're not wearing masks is because during monologues it's kind of important to use your facial expressions to get across certain ideas. So that's the only reason we're not, but again, we've all tested negative. Make sure to silence any cellular devices. We don't want to have any interruptions where someone's up here giving a monologue and a ringtone goes off and they get thrown out of their position. So if you have to do that before we get started, I would appreciate it. Other than that, I really hope you guys enjoy the performance. Thanks.
There are 2 stories that I'd like to share with you all here today. There's the story of Ken Sina, the teacher, the singer, the faithful. But there's also the story of Ken Sina who happens to have ALS. I've always thought it best to look at the glass as half full, so that's where I'll start. I directed choir and some 50 musicals in my 40 years of teaching. One year, I worked with a group of high school students and a good friend of mine, Mark Leiser, to put on a performance of Les Mis. This caused some of my fondest directorial memories. Middle school teaching is where I made the biggest splash, though. I found it rewarding working with middle schoolers because I got to help them unearth their artistic inspiration. There's nothing quite like that. I found that mentoring them was rewarding too, serving as someone they could just, talk to. And don't forget about fitness. Before ALS, I was the active outdoorsman, rock climbing, deer hunting, fishing, and when I was younger, farm work, cross country, and track. Oh, and through song, I found, worshipped, and formed a personal relationship with my Lord Jesus Christ. The Trinity is alive and active within my soul. As I reflect upon these characteristics, I realize that they form me. There isn't a Ken without teaching, there isn't a Ken without song, and there certainly isn't a Ken without faith. These all come together and create who I am. They play off of each other too. For example, my faith encourages excellence in music, and my music in turn allows me to praise my Lord. And though I never preached in my school classes about faith directly, I might offer my opinion when it felt natural. And after all Scripture is God-breathed and is useful for teaching. These are the good, the things that keep me going. But there are also the bad, the glass half empty moments. I was diagnosed with ALS in March of 2019, and boy, there is no solace in that diagnosis, no relief. It's a storm that nearly capsizes the ship of life. There's so much I want to say here about ALS. So much seems trivial in comparison. It's hidden, its cure is unknown, and I can't tap out. You know, as I was reflecting on this all, I thought about those Survivor shows. I'm sure you know the ones. The difficulty ramps up, and up, and up. And then the contestant taps, and it's over. The person is rescued from their difficulties, and, well, I can't tap. That isn't an option for me. But I can't let these feelings consume me either. I'll have my bad days, certainly. My bad times. Like when I discover, to my bewilderment, that I can't move another part of my body. But my wife Holly will comfort me. And I'll confide to some of my longtime friends. And I'll more actively engage in whatever activity I'm undertaking. And I'll constantly ask Jesus for support. You know, I'll go to these meetings with others who have ALS, and some of them will just be hopeless. That's no way to live. I just happen to have ALS. It isn't me, though. And all of you here, I hope, are aware of that now. ALS has taken things away, assuredly, but it can't take everything away unless I let it, and I don't. Its march continues, but I still have my voice, I still have my family, I still have my compassion, and I am still intimate with faith. And as long as this is true in some way or another, I'll remain.
I've always had a whole lot of stuff going on. How many stories do you want? There are a lot of good times, as I think back. We might not get to all of them today, but we'll start with this one. When I was a kid, I ran a vegetable stand near a bar in Big Flats, Wisconsin. That's north of here. Oh, I could sell stuff. Don't worry. Talking and working with people to make them know they're getting a deal is what I did. See, I could sell you vegetables, double the price. If you'd leave thankful I sold it for that, I say I could, but what I really mean is I did. Kind of a little off the top for commission. I had to be inventive to make a profit off the merchandise. Cutting deals and selling everything went pretty good. I was always that way though, working to make deals and get work. When I was 11 years old, I lied so I could be a newspaper boy. I was good size for my age, and they bought it. Good, doing the rounds too. Good enough that after my first week, I was given a second route. One in the morning and one in the late afternoon. Why just do one when you can do two? I had to be smart to make that happen though, because we didn't have a lot growing up. Maybe we didn't need much. We just kept busy and did good work wherever we could get it. And here's another story. When I was young, I worked on a hay crew catching bales. I'd head off to like early football practice after I got done. You know, everyone then was just happy to help each other out. For instance, I took on work when one of the farmers needed a hand. He broke his arm. A bull had turned on him. So I worked hard milking cows and all that. The great thing there was, I had met a farmer. And he had a wife. The wife had a brother. The brother had a friend. That friend's name was Becky. Well, we met. Yeah. Then we got married. Though it went pretty good. See, I'm lucky with neighbors and friends. I have best friends like Bob Anderson and Pete. I live right next to those guys. That's pretty good, right? Who else gets to say they lived by their best friends for so long? Well, it hasn't all been easy. When I was 15, it was tough learning my father had ALS. You see, my dad was sort of a jack of all trades. And he was pretty good at a lot of those trades. But he had some problems. Changed jobs a bunch, and I had a lot of brothers and sisters. None of us wanted to be a burden. I guess it's where I get my good work ethic from. I ran from problems back then. I learned though that once you stand up to the tough stuff right in front of you, it means you get better because of that work you did to get past it. Like Becky and me trying to start a family. For whatever reason, it didn't work out for 11 years. That's hard stuff. Then, kind of in a flash, we became parents, and the happiness we felt cannot be described. I wanted to do good by them. When you're holding a little baby and you're dancing with them and you're looking at how little they are and looking at Becky smile, it gets you thinking about what's really important. Then, just as everyone's growing up, I found out I had ALS. I didn't like that too much. Started to think about all the good stuff, though. I've been pretty lucky. Really special groups of people around me to share things with. I mean, who else gets to say they were part of the highest scoring national barefoot water skiing team, or 4 world records, all with their friends and family right there when it happened. All the work and dedication, 5 nights a week to do that. The shows and the practice and the teaching all the little kids. I mean, I can still see it all. I can hear those cheers. You want to hear that one? I got trophies to show and plenty of good memories too. Or there's the story of the time me and my friends unraveled a 40-foot long Brett Favre banner. It caused car crashes out on the Strip in Florida. I mean, you never saw people roll something up so quick and haul ass out of there, man. We got gone. Yeah. Next time. No complaints here. Hey, I guess I had so much energy because I needed it to do all the things I did in the short time I had. next time. These stories will be here whenever you're ready. Next time.
2019 was a beginning and an end for me. By the end of July, 16 vials of blood had been drawn, countless tests administered, and Dr. Collins finally had an explanation for me. Amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, Lou Gehrig's disease, ALS. We were gobsmacked. At the time, it felt like the end of who I was. A mother, a grandmother, a teacher, a helper, a doer. Things didn't happen to me. I simply took them in stride. I happened to them. All of these labels, so defining for me, seemed to come crashing to a definitive and brutal halt. But what choice did we have, other than to get up, collect ourselves, and move forward? We had to tell our families, our friends. We had to be intentional about it. It was emotionally exhausting. We had to consider treatment. How far was I willing to go? How much of myself was I willing to hand over to experimental studies and research? But first and foremost on our minds, we had to make our home livable, anticipate the changes in my mobility before they came. One of the first changes we made was putting up a ramp. Adding that ramp outside of our doors when I really knew I wasn't alone. Our friends came out, we talked, we laughed, we ate lunch in the sun, and I knew Michael and I wouldn't have to handle this on our own. Since then, life has proven itself over and over again to be a fountain of hope, of human connection. And the foundation to it all is community. I'm not able to go out anymore, doing the things I used to stop in for an unexpected visit to a friend, to go to church every Sunday, to see my beautiful daughters and grandchildren as regularly as I'd like. But the strength I find in others and in my community has by no means deserted me. I'm an extrovert. I love people. I always have. One of the greatest silver linings, if I had to find one, is that the circumstances have allowed Michael and I to bring others into our lives. A new community of people experiencing the same struggles as Michael and I. Reuniting with old friends who've fallen out of touch. A community of people to support us. Though I won't lie and say the transition from caregiver to cared for has been easy for me. But there's something beautiful in that even. Michael and I are finding new forms of intimacy through this disease. Like eating together when I can't do it by myself. I trust him to speak for me when my energy fails. I am an optimist, but there are things that I can't help but be discouraged about. I most fear losing my independence. I have always been such a vibrant person, such an independent and sometimes stubborn person. It's hard to wrap my head around losing that part of myself. I fear the day when I can't pick out my own outfits. The day I can't express myself through how I look and what I do. I'm worried that's how people will remember me. I've I've always been open about discussing the end of my life. That can unsettle people sometimes. I see myself lying in bed, surrounded by the people I love. I see my funeral, though I'd call it more of a celebration. I see my grandchildren, looking through old photos and reminiscing about the many wheelchair rides they took with their grandma Maggie. I have the song picked out for my funeral. Joyful, joyful, we adore thee. Michael, being such a realist, keeps me on track about this stuff. Didn't cause it, I can't control it, and I can't cure it. This is the mantra that keeps me moving forward. I am hopeful for my future, that what time I have left will be joyful, even fun, that I will make the most of every day. I don't really fear mortality anymore, because I know what really matters is who you are, and not what you can do.
So that concludes the monologue section of this performance. Now, like I said at the beginning, we're going to be talking to a guest expert about more of the scientific side of ALS. So if you guys could please welcome to the stage Dr. Masatoshi Suzuki. And we'll start with just giving a really, really brief introduction about yourself.
Right. Good afternoon, everyone. And then I'm Master, I'm Master Suzuki. I am associate professor from the Department of Comparative Biomedical Sciences, the School of Veterinary Medicine, vet school. And then also I'm a faculty member of the stem cell centers on campus with Madison.
Sweet. We'll be talking a lot more about a lot of the things you just said there, so if you're wondering what stem cells are or anything like that, we'll get to it in due time. Can you start, Maza, by explaining to us, just going over the basics of what ALS is?
So, as you can see already, it's the monologues. So ALS, also known as the amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, also known as the Lou Gehrig disease. And then also in UK, the name is also known as the motor neuron disease. So it's a progressive and late onset neurodegenerative disease. And specifically characterized by the loss of the neural cells in the spinal cord and the brain.
Gotcha. Can you explain a little bit about what like if I am diagnosed with ALS, what symptoms am I going to experience?
So first thing is that I missed to answer from the last questions, but so there's the ALS, that once the patient shows the ALS, so there's the specific neurons in the spinal cord and the brain, called the motor neurons, gradually degenerate. Mm-hmm. And then once the patients start to show the symptoms, so they feel the difficulties of the motor functions or muscle movement. And then the main symptom would be this muscle, the weakness.
Gotcha. Gotcha. So you're saying this degeneration of motor neurons causes this weakness of muscle that is so associated with the ALS diagnosis.
Yeah.
Can you talk about like the muscle twitching and maybe the uncoordination of walking and activities like that?
So in the beginning, the sign is very small. So they're starting from the difficulty, sometimes the dropping the pants, or sometimes the feeling the difficulty to speak, or like swallowing. But gradually, once the symptom is extended, so the patient starts to show the paralysis, loss of movement, muscles problems, and the coordination difficulties of the coordinate working, and then also standing. Sometimes the feeling is fatigue, or the feeling tired, or sometimes feeling is the pain. And then again, it's quite difficult to speak or swallowing.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So you're saying that like the start of the initial symptoms of this are things that people might just throw under the rug or just you know, oh well that's normal. I dropped my pen. That's normal. Or you know, maybe I'm having a little bit of difficulty speaking. Maybe not as normal, but not super concerning.
Yeah.
And from there, it works its way up progressively to something.
Yeah. In
more
the beginning, the
significant.
sign will be very small, but it gradually the problems or difficulty would extend in bodies.
Gotcha.
And then at the end is the patient would have a difficulty for the breathing.
I see. Well, I think we'll talk about that in a little bit here. Who's at risk for this?
So at this moment is the main cause of the ALS, or is the risk would be a bit difficult to answer yet. It's because it's in ALS, so majority is the 90% of cases are known as a sporadic. Sporadic means the unknown cause. The other hand is the 10% cases that remain familial. Familial means the somewhat relevant to the genetics or familial background. So the most of cases, 90%,
Are going to be that sporadic.
unknown cause.
Gotcha. So you're saying there's a familial aspect to some ALS cases, 10% or so, and then the others are sporadic. We don't know where they come from. We don't know why they come.
Yeah.
There's a big question mark
Yeah,
right
no relationship with the familial background, suddenly.
Gotcha. We talked a little bit on this already, but we didn't explicate anything. What is the prognosis of something like this? What does ALS lead to?
So unfortunately, the ALS itself is the fatal at the end. And then this is a late onset disease. So usually the initiations of the disease is around 40 or 60 days of age. And then the once patients show the diagnosis within 2 or 5 years as an average, and
Gotcha.
then reach to the end point.
So you're saying once the diagnosis is set, once they've received confirmation, or at least high likelihood that they have ALS, this individual, there's usually around a 2 to 5 year
Yeah.
time period.
Yeah.
Are there oddities with that? Are there people that supersede that time period?
Yeah, of course, it's depending on the patient. For instance, it's the sleep Hawkins, doctor sleep Hawkins. So that he can survive, or that he can survive longer times. But in general, the average of the ALS, just the prognosis would be, the time frame would be just 2 or 5
2 to 5 years. Okay, so people like Stephen Hawking's have kind of shown weird cases where, or odd cases, uncommon cases
Yeah.
where for some reason they can subsist for
Yeah.
decades and decades. Interesting. I was curious as to what treatment looks like and what curing ALS looks like.
So simply to say, currently there is no effective or powerful the method or the approach for cure. And then the only treatment would be like a preventive, depending on the conditions. So muscle cramping or any type of the specific symptoms. Try to decrease the progress of the symptoms.
Gotcha. So you're saying like, first and foremost, there's no cure, and then second of all, there are some minor treatments that help with things like the muscle cramping.
Yeah, and right now there are the 2 FDA-approved drug, they're called Riluzole, and then also the Edralone.
Okay.
So of course, those medications are available, but their effectiveness is there to be shown, so that they can extend the patient life only the 6 months or several months.
Gotcha. So you're saying there's a few FDA-approved drugs, but treatment, sorry, that they do something, but the it's underwhelming, perhaps.
Mhm.
I see. Can you tell us now a little bit, now that we have some of the background explained, what did you study while at university?
So in my university, my department, my lab is interested in the possible application of the stem cells to find out the treatment for the neurodegenerative diseases, including the ALS. And then specifically we try to create this in vitro cellular culture models to simulate the disease conditions that in ALS. And then also we try to use the stem cells to cure or treat the for ALS
Gotcha.
using the ALS model.
We'll talk more about that in a little bit. I was curious as to background. Where is it you started all this? So like when you went to university, what did you study? Why did you study it? What did you eventually go on to? When did you get to Madison? Stuff like that.
Yeah. So actually, I was originally from Japan. So I learned and studied the veterinary medicine
I see.
in Japan at
Is there-
Tokyo University.
Is there, real quick, is there a reason that is veterinary medicine particularly useful for studying something like ALS?
It's a good question. Honestly, it's a bit hard to. Of course, it's somewhat extended, but
Sure.
it's not. So originally, learnings that during the college and then also the graduate school is not directly relevant to the ALS.
Mhm.
However, I learned a lot of things. It's the cell biology, animal science, and then also the molecular biology.
Gotcha. So you're saying though it's not directly related, all the things you studied at university
Backgrounds,
are
yeah.
are complete projectable onto it.
Yeah, and then I came in Madison 2002,
2002.
and then I worked as a visiting scientist at one of the institute on campus called the Weizmann Center.
Gotcha.
And then there, I initiate the stem cell research, and then also the ALS research.
Gotcha. All right. And then I was curious. You had mentioned your lab just a minute ago. What's on the horizon right now for your lab? What's the next big thing? What are you working towards right now? Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
So the main focus is to use the stem cells, more specifically the type of the human stem cells. And then the one direction of our research is to use the stem cells to make models.
A model.
Yeah, models.
Okay.
And then the ALS, as we already discussed, is the key player is the neurons, or motor neurons in the spinal cord or brain.
Mm-hmm.
And then the neurons are innervate to the skeletal muscle.
Gotcha.
So that we call that system is the motor system. So we try to simulate or model the motor system, motor neuron, muscle, and the innervations.
Gotcha.
Innervated ones.
So you're saying these models are kind of like a simulation of what is
Yeah.
happening when the motor neurons interact with the muscles and vice versa and stuff
Yeah.
like that.
And then those models are very helpful or attractive tools to study the disease mechanism.
Gotcha.
At the same time, is that we can use those cellular models as a platform for the largest drug screenings using the large scale of the compound library.
Gotcha. So you're saying these models help you further or advance the understanding behind ALS, how it works, why it works the way it does,
Yeah.
that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Fantastic. I was curious, so you've been mentioning stem cells a lot. Can you talk to us a little bit about stem cells?
So stem cells are quite the powerful tool to utilize any type of the studies, including ALS, and then also neurodegenerative disease studies. And then more specifically, the stem cells are cells which has a multi-potential
Gotcha.
to differentiate or make any type of the cells. Of course, it's our studies, we use use the stem cells to create or make the motor neurons and then also the muscles.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're saying these stem cells are kind of like this universal Play-Doh
Yeah.
that you can form into different types of cells, whether it's muscle cells, neurons, brain cells, anything like that.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Can you tell us, I think you've already touched on this a little bit, why are stem cells particularly important to the study of ALS?
So actually not only the stem cells, because on the side of the ALS research or ALS treatment, finding the ALS treatment, so that any type of the new approaches could be just variable. Because it's the ALS, unfortunately we don't know this the disease etiology very well. At the same time is that we need to find powerful or effective treatment options. So that's the stem cell is also the one of the attractive tool to modeling. At the same time is that we can use those cells for the options or the tools for the treatment.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So you're saying it's
Kind of one of the new or innovative approach that we can expect.
Gotcha. So it sounds like it's useful in kind of two senses, for helping understand ALS and for helping treat ALS.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Mhm.
Fantastic. I wanted to switch topics a little bit here. Going back to ALS and its curability, I want like if I were diagnosed with ALS, one of the first things after knowing that it's not treatable, I feel like I would be curious as to why it's not treatable. Like, why is it so difficult to treat things like ALS or find cures for them?
So simply to say, this one of the critical cause to make the research more challenging is like we don't know yet is the exact disease etiologies or the disease cause.
Gotcha.
So and then also as we already discussed, is the 90% cases. So the majority of the ALS cases are unknown, sporadic. And then even the 10% of the familial cases, within it is that we have a multiple gene mutations. So not simple one gene is the relevant to the familial cases. So there's the approximately this the over 15 genes linked or related
To ALS.
that we know in the field.
Gotcha. So you're saying that like for the sporadic, so you're saying for both cases, familial and sporadic, it's just a matter of, it's hard to develop treatments and cures for ALS because we don't know much about the disorder yet.
Yeah.
And you're saying that even like narrowing our scope, looking at just the familial, which we have some kind of basis, we understand just that much more about it than the sporadic cases. Even when it comes to something like the familial case, it's not as easy as turning one dial on like a lock. You're dealing with 15 dials that you have to turn just right or something like that.
Quite complex.
I imagine as much. And I mean, that's like something that I often think about is because, you know, ALS has been in the public conscious since Lou Gehrig, the baseball player, and that was back in the 1930s. So it's been around for such a long time and in the public conscious for such a long time. It's still, you know, so little progress has been made seemingly on it, and that just goes to show how complex it is, I think. I want to know if there's any news regarding treatments or cures. So right now it's kind of doom and gloom. There's not a lot of hope if someone were to be diagnosed with ALS. Is there anything on the horizon?
So far, there's I think one news, the recent news would be just the availability of the second drug I already introduced. That is elrabones or the radicavir. That is the drugs to prevent the toxicity of the cells. And then was released in 2017. I think it's right after the Ice Bucket Challenge.
Oh, yeah.
And then, because unfortunately, the radicavir itself is not powerful or effective because it's still the limited availability or effectiveness. On the other hand, is the researchers in the fields are working to use similar to my approach, so using the in vitro models that are from the stem cells, and then the variety of originally from the the various ALS patients, and then use the models for the drug screenings, and then also the study the genetic background in disease using the large-scale analysis. That is the directions is the ones. Another one would be this, several researchers continue to work for the stem cell, that we call the cell-based therapies. So the implant or transplant the stem cells into the spinal cord or into the muscles to promote the neuroprotections or regenerations.
Gotcha.
And I think it's one of the trials that initiated from the Israel. Right now is the big clinical trials in U.S. or in the world. That is now is the phase 3 trials.
Phase 3, and that's the
Yeah.
last phase, right,
Yeah.
for a drug? Okay.
Yeah.
So it sounds like there's new treatments being developed, or at least, you know, there's new treatments trying to be developed. There's
Yeah.
kind of like theory crafting about
Yeah.
how we can use the stem cell, how we can use stem cells effectively to regenerate muscles and stuff like that, and neurons, and along with these phase 3, these late trials
Late
that
trials.
might yield something
Yeah.
something more significant. I want to circle back around real quick just to I feel like stem cells are talked about so much in kind of a layman's terms, like it's kind of a political hot topic, right? Like stem cells is always on headlines, and depending on what website you go to, it's either a good thing or it's a bad thing. Can you tell me about what stem cells you're talking about? Are there different types of stem cells? Where are they coming from? That kind of stuff.
Yeah, good question. So I only say as a stem cells, but the stem cells have two categories as a big. So one is that we call the pluripotent stem cells. So they are the multipotent stem cells. For instance, it's the embryonic stem cells. So derived from the stem cells that are established from the embryo, or the induced pluripotent stem cells, we also know as iPS cells. So those cells are originally derived from the skin cells, or blood cells, adult cells,
Gotcha.
somatic cells we call. And then by cell reprogramming, we can create the quite similar type of the cells like the embryonic stem
I see,
cells.
okay.
And then those cells are categorized as pluripotent or multipotent stem cells.
Gotcha.
And then those cells are quite powerful tools. We can create any type of the cells, any type of tissues.
So with those
main
modified
cells,
ones
yeah.
you're talking about, okay.
On the other hand, is the second category is the adult stem cells.
Okay.
So we have stem cells in the bodies. So muscle has the muscle stem cells. Brain has the neural or brain stem cells.
Mhm.
Liver would have a similar the liver stem cells, VPCs.
So
Those
you-
type of cells are quite different.
Gotcha. So it sounds like there's two broad categories, and then in one of the categories there's a bipartite. So there's two subcategories or
Yeah.
two subkinds. So you're saying there's the embryonic stem cells
Mhm.
that are derived from embryos. You're saying there are another type of stem cells that we can turn more or less into those embryo stem cells, right?
Mhm.
We can make them change. We can make them act as if they were the embryonic stem cells, and then there's the adult stem cells that repair muscle tissue and stuff when
Yeah.
you injure yourself or something like that. So with the why is it that so you're saying that the embryonic and the modified embryonic cell, those are the most useful. Why are those the most useful, and if they are, why are they the most
So
useful?
first thing is particularly for the like a culture model. So we need to have a specific cell type.
Sure.
So and then also those cells are quite the useful source to create any type of cells, including the motor neurons or muscle.
Okay.
And then also there's the iPS cells. So those are derived from our skin cells or blood cells.
Mhm.
So we can create the patient-derived stem cells. So
And those
we
are the
have-
modified
yeah,
ones
the
you're talking
modified ones.
Gotcha.
On the other hand, is for the cell-based therapy, like the trials at the phase 3 currently. So that one is used the adult stem cells.
I see. So the phase 3 cell therapy that's being worked on right now is using that second category.
Yeah.
It's using the adult
Because,
stem
yeah,
cells.
yeah.
Gotcha.
A little bit complicated, but the first category of the cells are quite powerful. We can differentiate any type of cells. On the other hand, these are too powerful, so sometimes is the forming is we call the tumor.
Oh, I
and
see.
we want to use those cells for the transplantations or therapies.
Gotcha.
So
you're
model's fine, but utilizing or using those type of cells for the therapies in the body is still need the additional work.
I see. So you're saying that like, though the embryonic and the modified stem cells can be turned into any type of cell we want,
Yeah.
sometimes they go, haywire, they malfunction and they form tumors.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's something obviously anyone
Yeah.
wants to avoid. I think that clarifies. I mean, like, again, like speaking just like colloquially, you hear a lot about stem cells and you never hear anything substantial about stem cells. So I wanted to just talk about that a little bit more. I was curious as to whether you think ALS will be curable one day, and if not, will it ever be manageable, and maybe like a time frame?
So far it is personally difficult to clarify or justify the time frame
Sure.
yet, but definitely the scientists are working very hard or actively. So to find out to make the treatment durable. So I hope we hope the ALS should be or must be durable very soon.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So you're saying that though it's hard to literally put like any kind of specific date on it, scientists are working really hard, and as far as I'm aware, there's a lot of new funding going into ALS research, right, from the federal government. Is that true?
Yeah, so far this gradually. So I think it's starting from the several after the Ice Bucket Challenge. I think it's the community interest in the ALS research is getting bigger, and then also the federal support, and then also the congressional support. Those type of the support are getting increased. Right?
Gotcha. So those extra funds just make it. It's kind of like a rolling snowball effect. Right now, maybe
I hope. Yeah.
the ALS snowball, the ALS treatment snowball is quite small, but with the extra funds, the extra attention, stuff like this, hopefully, we'll be able to find a cure sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I hope.
Okay.
Yeah.
I hope so as well.
That is beautiful.
In your opinion, what is the best way for the average person to help out with ALS research? Because obviously we all can't go into the sciences and we can't all focus our attention fully on ALS, but what's the best way that just your average Joe can help out?
Yeah, so of course the one is the same as the continuous discussion is the support, the financial support
Mhm.
or any type of the support for the research is also the critical. At the same time is the understanding of the ALS itself. So how difficult to figure out or how does the difficult or easy, not easy to find out the treatment. So I think it's understanding is also quite helpful.
Gotcha.
At the
So
same time, it's quite harmful, or not harmful, it's quite helpful support to the data.
gotcha. So you're saying financial support and maybe public consciousness.
Yeah, that's-
Something like the ALS challenge that helped raise awareness for
Yeah.
it. All right. Maza, was there anything that I didn't mention that you think would be fruitful to talk about?
I think it's mostly covered, but thank you very much for having
Yeah,
today's,
it was-
and then I'm happy to. So just answer any questions. At the same time, thank you very much for having this interest in ALS.
I'll talk more about the questions in a minute. It was a pleasure having you on. Please give a round of applause. All right, and that concludes our performance, but I have a few notes to make before we turn up the house lights and you guys can leave. I want to give some special thanks. So the Undergraduate Theatre Association, that's the team I paired up with to help work on this project. I've been working with them for about 6 months at this point, and without them I wouldn't have this room, I wouldn't have the posters, I wouldn't have my lights guy, I wouldn't have a lot. So they have really helped me out make this a reality. The theater board that allowed us to use this room, they didn't have to, we didn't pay a dime for this, so I really appreciate them chipping in. Steve Decker, my old director, back a year ago is when we first started talking about this kind of idea. And though he's not actively involved in the project right now, we are still in communication, and we're talking about different ways this kind of project can go. Huge help from Steve Decker there. More pressing, I guess, or more directly, Abby and Jacob, my two fellow actors. Without them, I would be doing all these monologues by myself, and that would be something you don't want to see, I bet. Crew, Yarn Saxa, Julie, and Blaine, helping out with just the things that I don't have time to do when I'm running around here like a chicken with my head cut off. Noah, really good job on the music, on the lights, they looked fantastic. Dr. Suzuki, obviously, for coming out. Researchers have a ton on their plate already, so being able to come out here and talk to someone who has a much better understanding of ALS than probably any of us do is a privilege. And then finally, and most significantly, are the storytellers. So Ken, Dave, and Maggie. I'm speaking from the bottom of my heart when I say that I was profoundly affected during the interview processes with these individuals, during the monologue creation with these individuals. The courage they possess to push forward and to approach the world in such a just outstanding way, in my opinion, is mind-blowing. I don't know if I could ever be as strong as them, and as I was interviewing them, I constantly thought that. So, final notes. There's going to be, we're obviously not accepting any payments, or we didn't want any admission for this performance. There is going to be 2 QR codes outside for donations to associations related to ALS. We are not associated with them at all. I am not getting any cut of that, obviously. That is just for funding like wheelchair access and treatments, and so stuff that Maza was talking about, helping perpetuate awareness of ALS. So there's 2 out there. One's the ALS Association, who I worked with directly. Again, I'm not employed by them or anything. And then there's also Team Gleason. They direct their funds to slightly different things. We have some bullet points on the poster that explains what they do. So take some time, look that over. And then lastly, I'm going to be out there, Maza's going to be out there, the actors are going to be out there, and some of the crew, and maybe Noah's going to be out there as well, just to kind of give an informal thank you and an informal farewell, and to answer any questions you guys have about the performance. Thank you again for coming. I really appreciate it. It's a beautiful day out today, and you could have been doing a lot else, so it means the world to me that you guys stepped in here. So